Hey guys, Mr. Happy here and welcome to Final Fantasy Bestiary. This series is dedicated to discussing the history and lore behind Final Fantasy's most iconic creatures. This episode, we will be discussing the Ultima Weapon. Ultima Weapon is one of the most notable recurring bosses in the Final Fantasy series. He is usually an optional boss, meant to test the player's skill and preparation as well as reward powerful items. He has taken many forms over the years, but he is most commonly represented as a creature that stands on four legs, sometimes mechanical and sometimes not. He is classified as a weapon, which is usually an indication of his origins of being man-made or mechanical in some form. It is also an indication of his purpose. He is purely meant to destroy. He shares this weapon classification along with many others, including two of his own nicknames, Atma and Ultimate Weapon. Most commonly, Ultima Weapon is associated with Omega Weapon, another recurring boss in the series. Sometimes Ultima is stronger than Omega, and sometimes vice versa. It really depends on the Final Fantasy universe that you are talking about. Ultima Weapon is also the name of an iconic weapon of the series, the Ultima Weapon. And finally, one of Final Fantasy's strongest spells, Ultima, is used by this weapon quite often. The spell did come first though. While Ultima Weapon is extremely iconic with the series now, he was not introduced into the series until Final Fantasy VI. Unfortunately, even this was barely an introduction since, in the SNES translation of the game, he wasn't even called Ultima Weapon yet. He was translated to Atma Weapon, and he was the guard of the passage to the Warring Triad on the floating continent. So unlike most of his future incarnations, he was not an optional boss, but it was instead mandatory to complete the World of Balance section of the game. While Ultima Weapon wasn't optional, his same model was used for an optional boss in Kefka's Tower, Ultima Buster, who is considerably stronger. He uses a flurry of elemental attacks as well as his ultimate attack, Ultima. Ultima Weapon and Ultima Buster's model is again used for Omega Weapon in the advanced version of the game, who is a great deal stronger than both of them. Ultima Weapon's next appearance would be in Final Fantasy VII, where he would appear as one of the 5 weapons originally awakened by Sephiroth when he casted Meteor. There would later become 7 weapons during Dirge of Cerberus and Before Crisis, just so nobody gets all semantic on me with that one. In this game, he is called Ultimate Weapon. Not Ultima, Ultimate. Ultimate Weapon. I'm just going to say it weird, so get it out of the way there. Though, for the sake of convenience, I think we should just call him Ultima. The first time the party encounters Ultima is during a battle at the town Mideel, where he attacks the party. This fight is actually required to continue with the game, but Ultima Weapon just flees in the end of it. In order to finish him, you must first obtain the airship, the Highwind, and then fly around the skies until you encounter him. He can then be fought in one of many locations, in the ground or in the sky, but will flee constantly. His HP never regenerates, however, and he will eventually find his way to Cosmo Canyon, where the party must defeat him for the last time. Here he will use Shadow Flare, which is able to be learned as an enemy skill, and Ultima Beam, and will drop the Ultima Weapon upon defeat, which is Cloud's best weapon of the game. He'll also open up the Ancient Forest section, and you will be able to fight Ruby Weapon in the sands near the Golden Saucer after defeating him. Final Fantasy VIII's Ultima Weapon is the game's second strongest boss, only trumped by his brother, Omega Weapon. His model is almost identical to his Final Fantasy VII counterpart, though with updated graphics and a bit more detail. Additionally, he wields Cloud's Ultima Weapon in his right hand, which he uses to attack the party. He can only be encountered at the bottom of the Deep Sea Research Center after defeating Bahamut and descending to the bottom floor. The party can draw the Guardian Force Eden from his body before he is defeated. Ultima Weapon would not be seen again until Final Fantasy X, where he was found in the Omega Ruins. All he was here was a byproduct of the Omega Weapon, created from his hatred of Yevon. He would again appear in 10-2, though him and Omega would sort of have their roles swapped. This time he would actually be stronger than Omega, yet he was demoted to a regular enemy. With a sense of humor, the developers state in this game's Bestiary not to call him Atma, a joke referring to his original Super Nintendo translation in Final Fantasy VI. Ultima would follow up his appearance in Final Fantasy X with an appearance in Final Fantasy XI, and was a mandatory boss fight in the expansion, The Chains of Promethea. A weapon created from the blueprints of the Luminian's prototype of the same name, he is the final boss of Chapter 6 and must be defeated after dealing with several mammoths and the Omega Weapon. Ultima is considerably harder than Omega, capable of dealing massive single target and AoE damage of all kinds. The prototype of the Luminians, Proto Ultima, is the final boss of the Temenos wing of Limbus and Altair. Proto Ultima is not only several times more difficult than Ultima from the story, but he is considered a great deal harder than Proto Omega. He was so strong at his release that most parties were helpless and would just sacrifice players to his ultimate attack, Citadel Buster, so that the rest of the party would even stand a chance at surviving by running several rooms away to get out of range. A final version of the fight, Arc Ultima, was made available once the level cap was raised to 99 and is even stronger than Proto Ultima. Now, I do want to give a special shout out to Final Fantasy XII, who, while they may not have an Ultima weapon, they do have Ultima, the High Seraph. Now, that's a recurring summon and entity in Ivalice. It's not technically an Ultima weapon, but is a powerful boss that must be fought, especially in Final Fantasy XII, where Ultima is an optional Esper found in the Great Crystal in Giruvegan. Now, some would say that you should log in Ultima with the rest of the Ultima weapons, and realistically, I probably could, but there's a bit of a difference. Now, Omega and Omega Weapon also are two different enemies, and I've been referring to them as one as the same. But Omega and Omega Weapon share some aspects, especially in the fact that they're usually optional super bosses. So I like to lug them in together. But while this is an optional Esper boss in Final Fantasy XII and is an entity in the Ivalice for Tactics and Tactics Advance, I don't feel like Ultima is in the same range as the Ultima weapons, whereas this is an entity and they are weapons of destruction. Ultima Weapon would next be seen in the Dawn of Souls re-release of Final Fantasy II, where he was given the model of the game's Behemoth-type enemies. He was similarly introduced into the sequel of Final Fantasy IV, The After Years, in 2008. Using the same model as his Final Fantasy VI counterpart, he is an extremely powerful boss that, similar to his Final Fantasy VII counterpart, drops the Ultima Weapon upon his defeat. And finally, we come to the present day, where he is present as the second to last boss in Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn's main story as of patch 2.0. An ancient weapon of Allegan origin, the Ultima Weapon is a war machine that was found and restored by the Garlean Empire with the intent of using it to quell the primal resistance in Eorzea. It can be piloted or act autonomously, either which way it's extremely deadly. It is specifically piloted by Gaius Van Belsar. The Ultima Weapon is capable of absorbing this game's summons, known as primals, and integrating their power into his being. This grants him the ability to summon great pillars of fire, shake the ground beneath his enemies' feet, and summon powerful winds. Additionally, its body hosts the ultimate magic within its heart, Ultima, which is so powerful it completely destroys the Garlean stronghold surrounding it, and was actually an instrument that was to be used by the Ascians to actually usher in a deadly enough era, I believe I want to say, something along those lines, that would bring back their god Zodiark. The creature is ultimately defeated and self-destructs. A rematch against the weapon will be introduced in 2.1, and will be further expanded upon in 2.2, where an even more difficult version of the fight has been said to be in the works. Now, while Ultima Weapon has not appeared in nearly as many games as his counterpart, Omega, he is still extremely memorable in the hearts of the Final Fantasy fans. Recognized as a badass enemy in almost every game, we can expect to see Ultima Weapon continue to be a trend in the Final Fantasy series. Thank you for watching, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more Final Fantasy videos and information. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. You can get regular updates about the videos that I'm posting. When I'm posting them, you can ask me questions about Final Fantasy XIV or other Final Fantasy titles if you have any. And of course, you can follow me on Twitch, where I do stream different RPGs, Final Fantasy games, Diablo, things like that. I stream quite a few different games. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.